Welcome to the Music Division pre-concert talk and concert supported by the Carolyn Royal Just Fund in support of chamber music in the Music Division at the Library of Congress. I am Carolyn Ward Bamford, curator of musical instruments here, and I'm joined by my colleague, Catherine Slowik, who is a music specialist in the concert office. This evening, we will present in the Coolidge Auditorium Tabea Zimmermann, an extraordinary musician who plays the viola, chamber musician and educator. She is here tonight on a recital tour with internationally acclaimed pianist Javier Perianes. This year, he pays tribute to Manuel de Falla on the 150th anniversary of his death or birth. No, birth, yes, right. And Javier will appear with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra later this month on the 28th, performing Schumann's Piano Concerto. So, since we're all local, that's not to be missed. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. I have a question for all of you. Think back to when you were young, for those of you who might have picked up a musical instrument, and think what spark it was that you chose that instrument or how old you are.
Dies dreijährige Mädchen versucht sich schon auf der Bratsche.
That was Tabea when she was 3 years old. The look of confidence, determination, the way your hand held the bow, I mean, unbelievable. I'm so glad someone captured that. You know,
someone came to visit that little conservatory where I was growing up in my little hometown because it was a very special school. So they didn't come to film me. They came to film the school and the teachers. And I found that little video only a few years ago. And I was very happy to find it.
I was very happy to find it too. It's just wonderful because I really do think about how it all started with musicians. I mean, then you went on to learn piano at 5. And Javier, when did you start piano and then go to viola?
7, not as soon as her. Unlucky me, I don't have that video to use it during the rest of the tour. Yeah, I will really use it.
Tell us how you got to the viola at 3.
Well, my older siblings, I have 3 older siblings, were already going to that little music school. My brother started piano, my sisters then started with cello and viola, and I, from the age of 2.5, wanted to play with them. And for a half year, I insisted by taking 2 wooden spoons every day from my mother's kitchen and a music stand, putting any music there and say, I practice. And after doing this for half a year, they talked to the violin teacher because they didn't really want me to start so early, but I did want to make music with the others, so that was the drive behind it. And then the teacher, who was a wonderful pedagogue, really, and he built the whole education on chamber music from the beginning. So he said, we need violists for the chamber music, and if you start on viola, you have your own instrument, and everybody had their niche, and we played chamber music from the beginning. I think my first quartet was when I was 4 years old and played Bach, Kunst der Fuge, some of the...
Yeah. Do you still have the viola?
No. It was a rental from a music school that was growing with me over the years. And it's quite a long time ago.
Yeah, right. What about you? How did you start on the piano?
I'm from a very little village like Tabea too, in the south of Spain, Andalusia, and I was told by one of my aunts that you have to do some music, and I said, I'm not interested in that thing. It's quite boring. Imagine now I'm doing what I'm doing. So I remember I was on holidays and I was determined to play the clarinet. It was my first instrument, by the way. I was 7. And then there was a big band in my little village, and I said, oh my God, I want to play that because all my good friends are playing there. So we were about to buy the clarinet, the small one. I was on holidays to the beach with my father, and one of my aunts said, I'm going to take you. You need to know what is a piano. I know what's a piano, but I'm not interested. So it was a hotel, a new one, mainly tourist. We were on the breakfast, and my aunt played for me. And I was like, wow, what do you think? It sounds like an orchestra. Apparently I said, wow, okay, I think I'm going to play this. No, but you have to tell the guy for the clarinet that you are not going to buy the clarinet. It's okay, my father will fix that. And I started with 7, 8 years old, the piano, with a beautiful and fantastic teacher that I had. She was a nun, and she's now 96 years old. And I did talk to her like 2 hours ago before she was going to sleep, because I have this beautiful thing that calling her from every part of the world. How hard is the concert? No, this one is difficult. Okay, then I will pray for you for 2 hours instead of 1 hour. Have you played the Schumann already? Yes, okay, 1 hour, it's enough. Then, okay. So how is the violist? She's great. She has our CD. Oh my God. Okay, today it's too late, but 30 minutes I have until I'm going to sleep. So that was my beginning. I was with her from the beginning, and it was a beautiful story. I was telling Tabea today that I had a beautiful childhood playing the piano with friends, with this great teacher that has been with me, imagine, all my life. She's now 96, and a beautiful parent. So I really enjoyed all this way. And when someone asked me, and when you decided to become a professional, I have not made that decision, so I'm still on time to drop it.
And this is the same for me. There was never a moment to think about what will I do professionally, because before I could think about it, I was a professional. And there was never such a decision or a day when professional life started. It all grew into it.
So while we're asking about origins, what's the origin of your collaboration together?
We've been playing together for how long, actually, Javier? What do you think? 10 years?
Yeah.
Not regularly, but every season, a few recitals together. We met through a common friend who organizes or did in the past a beautiful concert series in Spain, and he knew both of us, and he said, you two have to meet and to play together. And he arranged a meeting for us, and that is probably even 13 years ago or something that we met first time. And
10 is okay.
Yeah.
Well, we are thrilled that you're here today at the library, and I'm interested in your program. And before we get into that, we also had you visit the manuscripts in our music division collection, and I want to know what your thoughts are on seeing some of the manuscripts, and then what you found with the program tonight. You might have learned or noticed or discovered.
I mean, it was a very short visit today, but a very touching one, because I had the chance to see some wonderful autographs, and I was surprised, and I didn't know that you have Schumann's Märchenbilder, and that was wonderful to look at. And I asked to see some scores by Paul Hindemith, because I'm a great fan of Hindemith's music, and I know that he knew Miss Coolidge and wrote for her. And so I checked some scores and also some facts and I wanted to also tell you that there is a wonderful connection between Mrs. Coolidge, Paul Hindemith, and the viola that you have in the new
old viola.
which was given by the Baird family and the Fultons. And Hindemith, when he came to the States in 1937, he came to visit and met Miss Coolidge here in Washington. And then he went on to Buffalo to do music with Cameron Baird. Mm-hmm. And that family later made that wonderful gift of the viola, so there is a nice connection.
Just for those of you who might not be aware the Baird family from Buffalo in 1977 did loan us a viola that had been their father's, Cameron Baird's. And he had studied in Germany and as well in Berlin.
In 33,
34.
apparently, and that's how they knew.
Right. And he was, helped found the Buffalo Symphony and the music department in Buffalo. And the viola had been on loan to us for many decades for our use, and it's been wonderful. And then last year, through a wonderful transaction of two American families, the instrument was presented to us for our permanent collection. So maybe we'll hear it as well.
So I wanted to ask a little bit about how you designed this program. I'm sure you've designed many great programs together, but I was fascinated by how it's put together because you have these two halves that feature composers who had relationships with one another. So if you would talk a little bit about that.
It was very simple. She decided the program and said yes. No, we have been working on this program, and we were talking this morning with a journalist about how we both love to invite to the audience to make a journey or an adventure with us and discover all this beautiful relationship, not just in a personal level, because of course we all know the relationship between Schumann, Clara Schumann, Brahms, Joachim, whatever, but also to find out inside of the music those relationships. So first half is clearly a romantic one with this beautiful music by Schumann and Brahms, and then in the second half, Tabea was explaining this morning that beautiful admiration and respect that Shostakovich and Britten had among them. So it's beautiful journey, as I was saying, and Tabea will explain more if he wants. But we love to establish these connections between composers in a personal and also in a musical level.
I think in an overall picture, a concert program should have many facets for you to experience many different emotions. And so we choose, of course, what would give a complete picture if you travel and you only have one chance to present a program. So you have to put in many aspects. And I think we found a program that has a lot of real chamber music sounds. All the music we play today is very intimate and very personal in a way, and we can promise you to go through many different emotions in the evening and be prepared in the second half for some not easy listening, probably. In Benjamin Britten's Lachrymae, it is quite a riddle. It's a puzzling piece because it's 10 reflections, like variations on an old song by John Dowland, but you will hear that song only at the very end of the piece. So it's not like normally you hear the theme and then the variations, but this time you first get confusing little bits and you have to think of how this will come together to one melody at the end of the piece, and I think it's a beautiful journey through that music. And then when it ends, one could actually just continue with Shostakovich sonatas, but we will probably still have a short break and then applause in between. But one could also just end Britten and continue with Shostakovich. It would also work.
Yeah. I know a lot of the reviewers, when they first saw that Britten premiered at the Aldeburgh Festival, were confused for the reasons that you discuss and sort of said, and especially because the song that's quoted isn't the Lachrymae of the title, right? It's a different one, and that was only quoted in the sixth reflection and only in the second strain, so you don't even hear the iconic da 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 da.
Do you want to join and sing with us at the end?
But I'm wondering, when you play music that has so much quotation, and of course all four composers featured on the program tonight were master quoters of themselves and others, how is that for you as performers? And do you find it sort of a more private thing? or something that you're trying to bring out in the music to show the audience? Or does it vary by composer? Shostakovich can be quite cryptic, I think, and Britten as well in this case, as you say.
Yeah, but the concert moment itself is for me not a moment to show or explain. For me, the beauty of a concert is the non-verbal communication that we establish on stage with the audience, and everybody has their own associations and the mind wandering off to your own listening experiences of similar pieces or the same ones or different. And I think one can talk about music outside the concert, but in the moment of music, for me, it's not about showing anything or explaining it in the playing, but living it as it comes in the time of the piece. For me, there's always a big correlation of the space in which we play and the musical timing to tell the musical story as we live it together in the same moment.
And so with contemporary composers, you've had works dedicated to you or commissioned works from them. How do you approach that, or how has that been approached to you, a piece?
I've premiered many pieces. I'm still counting and working on my archive. I've now put a list of 47 premieres together, but I might find a few more when I go through more of my drawers. Being a violist, it started very early with the question of, the viola doesn't have so much repertoire. Would you like to be part of a premiere? I got very early in my life, I got confronted with that question, and I learned quickly. I have perfect pitch. That was always very helpful in learning contemporary music. So it was not easy is not the right word, but it didn't take me as long as it would take someone without perfect pitch to learn the complicated scores. Or let's put it differently, if I would not have perfect pitch, maybe I would have done less contemporary music in my career. And most of the times composers came to me and heard me play and said, I would like to write something for the viola, and then I let them write and find a solution for the problems I would find in the scores. It's a fascinating process of
working
trying to understand the mind of a composer, and it taught me so much about the older music I'm playing, of this process of questioning the score. Like in a conversation with a living composer, you can ask, why did you do this? What made you think of this? And through those conversations, I learned a lot about how to approach a text and find solutions from composers that I can not have a real conversation anymore, but the scores do tell us so much.
Yes, and it's wonderful for musicians to come and look at our scores and see what is in the new edition or what was originally written. We also felt that way about works for viola, and just in the past few years for the new viola, we have commissioned a piece in 2015 for it, and then currently we have 2 commissions going for it. So we're trying to add as well and to the repertoire for the viola.
Could you also tell us a little bit about the process you made the adaptation of the first work on the program for viola, and how that process works and how you've contributed to the repertoire for the viola in that way?
So I made a really big journey throughout my life about transcriptions or original repertoire when I was very young, and I found my niche in the viola. I was absolutely adamant to play anything that was not original for the viola, which made life very difficult for my teacher because there wasn't so much repertoire for beginners. So I was very stubborn for a long time to play original viola repertoire, and only much later did I start to enjoy the process of adaptation and transcription, and now I have no more shame feeling when I take from other instruments. So with the Fantasiestücke, it's interesting because I have done different versions, like different octaves for the first movement, for example. I find it in the viola can play it in the higher register or an octave down, and I don't even tell Javier before we go on stage which one it will be tonight. So, and Brahms, of course, he made his own viola part for the sonatas. But with Schumann at the time, I think he made it when he wrote the romances for oboe, he said, or violin. And when it's Fantasiestücke, you have the clarinet or violin or cello. And I think it was done many times, and just the viola didn't really exist as an instrument at the time, even though Schumann then wrote the Märchenbilder, but he also wrote them for a violinist who then picked up a viola. So
there's also a lot more money in selling copies of music that can be played on different instruments, right? For the composer thinking practically, they need that. Could I ask what the origin of your early resistance to playing transcriptions was?
It was probably this identification of the instrument because of being number 4 in a family where each one of us had his or her instrument. And I think it was finding my own voice with the viola. And that was the first position, but I was very young. So now I'm more open-minded, and I think it would be a pity if I could play only the original viola pieces, because the repertoire is not that big, and you learn so much more from the language of a composer if you know all the other pieces. So sometimes it's also good to do these arrangements just at home and not on stage, but I think you will enjoy the Fantasiestücke also on the viola. I hope.
I also want to ask about your contemporary work with foundations that you've done. And if you look over there on the wall, you will see Beethoven. Yes. And you were at the Beethoven. It is unusual. It was painted while he was alive and young and fresh looking and rosy cheeked. But you were at the Beethoven house and you got to play his viola as well. Is this true?
Yes, Beethoven as a young man, when he was 18 or so, he was a viola player in the local band, had to feed his family
with the viola.
And he was a young viola player there, yeah.
That's great.
And that viola was in the Beethoven house in the museum, had not been played for over 100 years. And then in 2001, I think, the director of the Beethoven house asked me if I would want to come and try that viola and play on it. So that was a very nice experience, of course. I couldn't take the instrument out of the building, but because we did a recording then, and I had to only do it in there. So I didn't really get to know the instrument very well, and it's not a viola that you could use on a big stage or it's a big difference if you play a viola in an ensemble, in a tutti, in a group, or if you need an instrument for solo use. It's very different. That brings us also to the question of old instruments, new instruments, and I always chose to play a modern viola because I think the demands of the instrument nowadays are very, very different from what the viola parts were in earlier centuries. So,
and so you play on contemporary made violas today. And then you went on to record all the Hindemith and were a part of the foundation. Right. Are you currently the Hindemith Foundation?
Yes, I'm working also for the Hindemith Foundation. This is a foundation with the goal to help all his manuscripts being printed in a very critical edition. Like so, it's nearly towards the end of the work of that Gesamtausgabe. Also, the foundation lives from the copyrights when Hindemith is played, and with that money that comes in, we have our musicologists working on that on that edition. That's the main work of the Hindemith Foundation, and it will probably end in 33 when there is no more copyright coming in. By then, we need to be finished with the record. But I love Hindemith as a composer and as a person. I think he was a wonderful man and so knowledgeable without being not so well educated in a way. He was not a scholar.
Not a trained,
No, he was self-taught in so many ways, but he had a very wide perspective to music and people and teaching and composing and the composer as a part of society. And I think he was a wonderful personality. So this is why I also give some of my energy
to that. And then currently the Ernst von Siemens Foundation, and I will get to you on this. I feel like I'm neglecting you with that.
Thinking about the beginning of the concert.
Oh.
Could you just tell us the other foundation that I'm working for is the Ernst von Siemens Music Foundation, which I got to know through the wonderful prize they gave me in 2020. I got it in 2021 because of COVID, because the COVID year then deleted everything, like our last tour to the States, which was planned in 2020.
To here. Yes.
So we would have
This is a rescheduled.
That's true. And so in the Ernst von Siemens Music Foundation, it's the most wonderful thing to spend all the money that foundation has on helping so many institutions with contemporary music, commissions, ensembles. This is very easy work because it's giving out money that someone started to collect a long time ago. This is a nice and easy job, actually.
Well, I was going to ask Javier, as a aficionado of the clarinet at such an early age, I was curious if you had played the first half of the program with clarinetists before and how that's a different process.
I have played with clarinet. I have played also with cello, the Fantasiestücke. So, well, my score is a bit of a puzzle because you have a lot of indications when you play with this. The tempo could be slower, Javier. Yes, of course. I have different tempos for different musicians, but that's beautiful because you listen all the possible registers. You are flexible. If some of them decided to do it in a totally different way, it's something that I appreciate, really appreciate. And if some others said, I would prefer this doing in a different way, I can adjust myself. I'm a good listener and I like playing with different colleagues, so it's a pleasure. But I have to say something, and it's not because he's here. I have to say that among the musicians, we have top instrumentalist level, but there are others, like the French used to say, it's hors catégorie. It's different way. Playing with Tabea is that way, because it's a fascinating thing that when you start the concert, you never know what's going to happen. Because
That's right.
yeah. Sounds frightening for a pianist, of course. But no, because the level of flexibility, the level of musicianship, the artistry is so high that, and this is something that a lot of colleagues ask me, but you must be, on the contrary. I'm enjoying more relaxed than ever because there is nothing. Of course, there are some agreements on some stuff, but then when we are starting to play, things happens, miracles happen sometimes. We are together most of the time, so something that I really appreciate, but it's not the most important thing. No, really, I think it's very special. That the fact that you have played this piece with the clarinet or with the viola or even with the cello, for me, it gives me more perspective and much more flexibility. That's it. If you ask me, do you prefer the clarinet? No, I don't prefer the clarinet. Do you prefer the viola? No, it's a different story, a different sound. And for me, it's not a different approach. It's music. That's it.
And I share that view. For me, it's not the instrument. It's the music that has any good music, and we talk about masterpieces, have so many different ways of looking at the text that you find a coherent way for a phrase, and the way you start it, you have to continue it in one way. If you start differently, you have to continue differently. And this is the magic of the moment in the concerts.
He has his fingers crossed. He's going this. There will be a lot of magical moments tonight. Do we have any questions? Oh, wow. Michelle, why don't you just make some choices?
Well, thank you very much. I was very interested that you said you have perfect pitch. I do not, and I look on people with perfect pitch the way I look on the Olympians doing things that are unbelievable. So I have a question about that. As we know, the strings play with just intonation and the pianos are tuned to equal temperament. So how do you deal with that?
This is a very complex question. How much time do I have to answer it? So for me, it's not just one system. It's not just intonation, or I would call it harmonic intonation in the moment. I have to adjust to the harmony of the composition. I have to adjust to the tuning of the piano. I have to know what function in the chord I'm playing, so I can play a major third in tune with the piano tuning or not. So it's a very complex thing. There are a million different situations. We just had a discussion this afternoon at lunch about intonation. I was telling Javier that there is one tradition that I don't understand, and that's the so-called expressive intonation. I have a big question mark to the logic of only melodic intonation, because we need harmony, we need to understand what's the moment of a chord, where do I sit in the chord, and then I have to hear it. I have to decide what I want to hear. Maybe that's the main thing in practicing. I don't practice how I play because I don't know what the piano will be, or I can only practice what I want to hear, and I can practice how to find that note inside the chord. And I can never promise that I find all of them, but I know what I want to hear. Yes.
Michelle?
I want to add a tiny bit to the history of this particular performance tonight. When I heard that Tabea Zimmermann would come here, I was over the moon, and then the pandemic hit. And I kept on pestering Susan Vida, the former head of the music division, and said, we need to get her back, we need to get her back. And she said, I do my best, I promise, I do my best. Unfortunately, she passed not too long ago, so she cannot take part in this concert. But this concert is not only for us, this concert is for Susan Vida as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're also delighted that you're both here. It's really a thrill for all of us. It was mentioned earlier your love of chamber music, and I was particularly interested in which chamber pieces, as a violist, you love to play.
The list is very, very long. For me, there's no real difference in how big an ensemble is that I would call it chamber music. For me, there is only one way of music making, and that is with the ear. So I'm also doing it with orchestras. After our tour, I go to the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, and I do a program where I lead from the viola, I've done it with larger orchestras too. So for me, it's the same way of music making. If it's 2 people or 45, maybe not every score is possible to do it only from listening and no sign language needed, but I would call that the chamber music approach. And so this is not so much the number of people, but it's an approach.
When violist Roberto Diaz was chosen to lead the Curtis Institute, many commentators said, at last, not a pianist or violinist is leading a major conservatory, not playing second fiddle, pun intended, to... and I just wonder, in Europe, do violists have more of a leadership, whether in conservatories or even leading from, as conductors? And a second question, if you don't mind, for transcriptions, how popular is the violist transcription of the Bach suites?
Oh, very popular. Let me start with your second question. Every violist plays the Bach suites and the Bach sonatas and partitas for violin. Same way. In Europe, the viola has maybe a little bit different position than what I experienced in the States, that it's considered a more normal instrument. It's not such a special highlight where the viola is appearing on a stage. Like more orchestras invite viola soloists to play a solo concerto. It happens more often, not as often as violinists, of course, and as pianists, and recitals are also not the norm, but it happens more often than here. Now, I don't know how many violists are directors of academies. This I cannot answer the question.
Would you like to do one?
No. I'm a very devoted teacher, but I would not be good at running an institution, believe me.
I think we might have time for one more question. Okay, the final question.
Thanks. So first, just a quick thanks to the moderators. I mean, every time I come to one of these pre-concert talks, you guys just do such a wonderful job of bringing out stuff that I had no idea about, and it makes the whole experience so much more informative. The question I had, I was wondering... if you could expand a little bit on your comment about the instrument. There's a series here at the library where the musicians play on the Stradivarius instruments that the librarian has, and including the violas. But you had a comment earlier about how the music, maybe particularly contemporary music, demands things that lead you to prefer a more modern instrument. If you could just expand on that, I'd be curious about that.
Well, the viola is a little in-between instrument. We don't have a perfect size or proportion for the viola. Like in violins, you have differences that only in millimeters. In viola, the differences can be up to 8 centimeters. You see very small models, very tall ones. And in the old times, the viola was much more just a tenor voice with playing long notes, not very virtuosic, so it could be a very big and not very handy instrument. But with the viola becoming more of a equally demanding voice in chamber music, in orchestras, in solo, and in concerti, we could not possibly handle those difficulties with the very big violas. It's not possible. And for violin makers, it's a fantastic challenge now, like for composers, to add to the repertoire. For violin makers, it's very rewarding to build good violas, contemporary violas, because there's so much space to try out in different models, different qualities. So the world of viola is a very wide one, depending if you want to go to the more soprano voice or the more bass voice. And I like to have a viola that has all the qualities and that I can choose with the way I play if I want to underline the darker colors or the brighter colors and find the words. I wouldn't want to have a viola that has too much of its own distinct quality, because I would feel that would limit me in a style. So for me, the instrument is really the instrument, but I have to fill it with very different sound qualities according to the scores I have in front of me.
And also, just to continue that conversation, both of our violas are contraltos. They're smaller size violas, and they're actually built on the same size pattern by Stradivari in the varying years of 1690 and 1727. So if you look at them, you might see the minute differences that you might see more in a violin, but these are the smaller size. So.
Yeah, very comfortable.
Yes, yes.
Could I ask one follow-up question for you, Javier, which is some of the things that you said sounded sort of like what I've heard pianists say about pianos. And I'm wondering, do you have an instrument that you prefer, or are you the sort of pianist where it's the one that's closest to you?
I'm very practical, my dear, in my life, because I don't have the luxury of traveling with my instrument or the other. Yes. So when I'm in a hall, do you have another instrument? No, this is what we have. Okay. So you can find a fantastic Yamaha, a fantastic Stanway, a fantastic Kawai, a fantastic different brands. All of them can be fantastic instruments, but this is what we have today. And by the way, it's a very good instrument, a beautiful sound, a fantastic piano, but it would be a bad instrument. This is what I have. So there is no other solution. And you find sometimes, I remember always my first time in Japan playing at Suntory Hall, that they put on the stage 16 different grands. And I said, dude, really, I don't have time for this because it's a lot of time. So I started to decide that this is brown. I'm sorry, brown. This is very strange. So, and it was terrible because the Japanese are very disciplined with the tuning and the work on the instrument. And I played the first one. Oh my God, this is fantastic. You can play the second. Yes, I played the second one. But this is even better or not? At the end, I said, this one is fine. And the other for Tim for the next day. That's it.
Or you could do as Wanda Landowska when she played here. She brought her harpsichord with her playal. Yeah, from France. Yep.
Well, we've heard a lot about how perfect pitch is a sort of superpower, but I have always thought that this ability of pianists to do with what's in front of them is it's totally baffling to me as a string player. It's so amazing. Yeah.
All right, well, great. Thank you all for your questions and your time, and enjoy the concert.